I wasn't supposed to be there that early. Normally, I came in around 8:30, grabbed my coffee from the lobby kiosk, and started checking emails before the building even woke up. But that Tuesday, I couldn't sleep. Something about the quarter-end reports had been nagging at me. One of those gut feelings that keep accountants awake, even when everything on paper adds up. So I left my apartment at 6:30, just as the sky was turning that dull steel color before sunrise, and drove downtown. The parking garage was almost empty. The elevators hummed quietly. It felt like walking into a dream, the kind that's too quiet to be peaceful. When the doors opened onto the 19th floor, I immediately noticed the lights. Our office was usually dark until the first shift of admin staff arrived at 7:30. But my hallway, the one that led to the finance wing, was fully lit, fluorescents humming, every door cracked open. The air smelled faintly of coffee and something else, hot plastic. I walked past the conference room, and that's when I heard voices. Low, fast, like people who weren't supposed to be heard. My office door was half open. Inside were two men in gray polos and tool belts, crouched by the Ethernet ports near my desk. One held a small black box, looked like a router or maybe a switch. The other was feeding cables under my desk, hands moving too quickly for someone doing standard maintenance. "Can I help you?" I asked. They both froze. One of them, tall, bearded, mid-30s, stood up slowly and gave a polite, too-rehearsed smile. "Morning, sir. Just running some diagnostics for IT. Should have wrapped this before anyone got in. Sorry for the mess." I glanced at the ID badge clipped to his belt. No logo, just his photo and a first name, Liam. "Diagnostics?" I said. "For what system?" "Network stability," he said instantly. "Routine check before we roll out the new routers." Funny. I managed all procurement for my department. No one had approved new routers. The second guy, younger, nervous, stood up with the black box and said, "We're almost done here, promise." Then he nudged the device with his foot, trying to slide it behind a filing cabinet. I stepped around the desk. "Hold on. I'm going to need a work order number." The younger one's eyes flicked to the bearded guy. Silence. Then the bearded one said, "It's internal." "AITA requested?" "Yeah," I cut in. "It would have told me. I manage their billing." That landed harder than I expected. The younger one's face went pale. He mumbled something about wrong office, unplugged the cable, and started packing up faster than I could keep up. "Relax," I said, trying not to sound like I was accusing anyone, even though I was. "Just let me call down to IT to make sure—" But before I finished, they were already halfway to the door. "Sorry for the confusion," the tall one called back. "We'll double-check with ops." And then they were gone. Just like that. I stood there for a second, listening to the sound of their boots fading down the hallway. The smell of hot plastic was stronger now. I walked around my desk and noticed my monitor was on. I hadn't turned it on. The screen showed my inbox. Open, active, logged in. Someone had been inside my email. My chair was slightly turned, just a few degrees off from how I always left it. The mouse cord had been moved. My external drive light blinked twice, then stopped. I sat down slowly, heart beginning to pound. I scrolled through my sent mail. Nothing new. No drafts. No attachments. Everything looked fine, which somehow made it worse. Then I noticed something on the floor beside the trash bin. A single sheet of paper folded once, like someone had dropped it and forgotten. I picked it up. It was a printed spreadsheet. Client list, revenue projections, internal commentary. Confidential. But the file name wasn't mine. It belonged to the CFO's private folder, the one only 3 people had access to, and somehow it was sitting under my desk. I stood there staring at it for a long moment, the hum of the office settling back into that hollow quiet. The printer light across the room flickered once, like it was waking up. I reached for my phone to call IT, but stopped halfway. How was I supposed to explain this? 2 unlogged contractors, a file from the CFO's drive, my inbox open. I'd sound paranoid. Instead, I slipped the paper into my bag, turned off my monitor, and walked to the window. The sun was breaking through the skyline, spilling gold over the buildings like nothing was wrong. I told myself it was probably a mix-up, a mistake, something that would make sense by noon. But as I shut off the light and stepped into the hallway, I caught my reflection in the glass of the conference room door. Tired, uncertain, a man who suddenly didn't trust the walls around him. And for the first time in 7 years, I left the office without checking a single email. Later that day, I tried to forget it. Dinner, TV, sleep, the usual distractions. But around 3 in the morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating on the nightstand. A new email from System Security. Subject: Access Alert. Confidential Directory. CFO Reports. Q1. User ID. M. Hall. Time: 6:57 a.m. That was the exact minute I'd walked into my office. I sat there in the dark, screen light flickering across my hands, and felt my stomach drop. At the time, I thought they were just contractors. Turns out I was the project. By the next morning, my name wasn't just on a spreadsheet. It was on every email, every file log, every digital breadcrumb that mattered. At 9:02 a.m., my phone buzzed. Subject: Meeting, Conference Room B, from CFO Robert Kane. CC, Head of Security. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. I walked down the hall, trying to convince myself this was about something else. A misplaced report. A minor audit question. But the look on the receptionist's face when she saw me walk past killed that hope instantly. You know that look people give you when they already know the headline, but you don't? That was it. When I stepped into the room, Kane was already there. Crisp suit, cold smile. Beside him sat Mallory, the head of corporate security, arms crossed, posture like a blade. There was also an HR rep sitting awkwardly near the wall, holding a notepad she clearly didn't want to be holding. "Morning, Mark," Kane said, smooth as silk. "Let's make this quick. Take a seat." I did. The silence stretched thin. Finally, Mallory slid a folder across the table. "We've had an internal alert. Sensitive data was accessed and duplicated from your workstation yesterday morning." I stared at the folder. My voice barely came out. "Duplicated?" "Correct," Kane said. "From your user ID on your computer between 6:56 and 7:04 a.m. I swallowed. I wasn't even scheduled in yet, and there were... Mallory cut me off. "We know. We checked the building logs. You entered the office at 6:57, which means you were right there when the data was being moved." She flipped open the folder and turned it toward me. Screenshots, timestamps, my username, my IPC, all there. Each one like a fingerprint I didn't remember leaving. Kane leaned back in his chair. "We'd like to understand why files from my private directory were accessed from your machine." There it was, the file I'd found under my desk, the one from his folder. "I didn't open that file," I said carefully. "When I came in, there were 2 men in my office. Contractors. They said IT sent them to..." Mallory's eyes sharpened. "Contractors?" "Yes, 2 of them. One had a badge, said Liam. They were connecting something under my desk. When I asked for a work order, they left." She exchanged a quick look with Kane. "No one from IT was scheduled on your floor yesterday," she said. "I checked." "Then who the hell were they?" I asked. No one answered. Instead, Kane steepled his fingers, calm and practiced. "Mark, let me be clear. This isn't an interrogation yet. But the optics are bad. You've worked here, what, 7 years?" "8. 8, he echoed. "Good record, solid reputation. That's why I'm giving you a chance to explain before this goes formal. Maybe you were careless. Maybe you left your terminal unlocked." I didn't," I said flatly. "Maybe," he continued, "you've been under pressure. Extra income could be tempting." That one hit like a slap. "Excuse me?" He smiled almost kindly. "Relax. We're just exploring all possibilities. Internal leaks happen. People panic, make bad choices. I'd rather handle this internally than bring in law enforcement." That last line wasn't a kindness. It was a warning. Mallory stood, collecting the folder. Until we sort this out, your system access is suspended. Turn in your badge. HR will escort you home. I looked from her to Kane. You can't be serious. Someone's setting me up. Then find proof, Kane said softly. Until then, we act on the evidence we have. He stood, straightened his tie, and left without another word. The room smelled like antiseptic and control. Mallory followed, but paused at the door. If those contractors exist, you'd better pray there's a record of them. Because right now, there isn't. The HR rep avoided my eyes the whole elevator ride down. She handed me a small envelope with my access card inside. They said to keep your personal items at home until further notice, she whispered, like she was scared of being overheard. Outside, the morning sunlight hit too hard. People walked past with coffees and phones, the normal rhythm of a city that didn't care what was happening to me. I sat in my car for 10 full minutes before starting it. My hands were shaking. When I got home, I did what any sane person would do. I called IT myself. No answer. Just a recorded message. You have reached the systems department. For urgent requests, please contact your division head. My division head was Kane. Perfect. I opened my laptop and logged into my private email. I still had a few work backups from before the access restrictions. Invoices, contracts, metadata. I searched the logs for that morning. The timestamps didn't lie. 6:56 a.m., a new network connection, external port, temporary MAC address. Whoever it was had plugged something into my line, but the entry name made my skin crawl. Device ID, Sfinet G1. Tag owner, Kane Robert. I stared at the screen, pulse in my throat. There it was, his name. But the question wasn't why his tag was there. It was why he needed mine. That night, I sat in the dark again, scrolling through files, piecing together the trail. Each click made the picture clearer and worse. Whatever Kane had done, he'd buried it inside my system. I wasn't a suspect. I was a smokescreen. When the email came through from HR, administrative leave pending investigation, I actually laughed. It sounded polite, almost merciful, but I knew what it really meant. I was one report away from being the story in the Monday meeting. Still, as I stared at the glow of my laptop, another thought crept in. They expected me to panic, to beg, to defend myself. But that was just the beginning, because the real thief wanted me to fight. For 2 days, I played the role they wanted, the suspended employee, quiet and compliant. I answered HR's calls, kept my tone neutral, told them I'd cooperate fully. Then I logged off and went to work on my own terms. The first thing I did was resurrect an old laptop from my college days. No company trackers, no network tether, no eyes but mine. I connected it through a private VPN, booted into a stripped-down OS, and started pulling local cache from my backup drives. Years of being paranoid about audits suddenly paid off. Corporate systems love leaving fingerprints. Every device that connects, every port that opens, it all leaves metadata. And in that metadata, I found ghosts. At 6:56 a.m., right when the breach began, my computer had been linked through an admin override, the kind reserved for system-wide maintenance. Only 5 people in the company had that clearance. I was not one of them. But one of them was Kane. Still, raw data wasn't enough. I needed something that couldn't be hand-waved away. I dug deeper. Network logs, timestamps, device hashes. Around 1 a.m., I found something buried in an archived firewall file. A relay command redirecting packets from my terminal to an unlisted server. The destination path looked internal, but the signature wasn't. It was masked. And the masking agent? An old finance auditing tool that hadn't been active for over a year, which meant someone revived it. Manually. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. This wasn't just about framing me. This was about hiding something. That night, I drove back to the office building. My badge didn't work anymore, but I didn't need it. I knew the cleaning staff rotation. Same people for years, same shift changes. When the night guard went for his smoke break at 11, I slipped into the stairwell and climbed. Floor 19 was dark, empty. I used my phone flashlight sparingly, moving toward my office. Inside, everything looked undisturbed, except for one thing, the black box. The one I'd seen under my desk that morning. It wasn't there, but something else was. Under a stack of printer paper on the credenza was a small flash drive. Plain metal casing, no logo. I don't know why I noticed it. Maybe instinct, maybe luck. I pocketed it and left before anyone could see me. Back home, I plugged it into the old laptop. The files weren't encrypted, which was strange, almost like someone expected them to be found. Inside were transaction sheets, offshore transfers, signatures, and every single approval came from Kane's account. Millions moved in consulting fees to shell companies with near-identical names to legitimate clients. The kicker? The files were time-stamped during the same hours my credentials were supposedly leaking data. I wasn't just the smokescreen, I was the firewall. I sat there staring at the numbers until sunrise. Then I zipped everything, named it something forgettable. Project Audit. Backup. And stored it on a hidden partition. The next step was riskier. Proof of delivery. The company's own auditing team reported to Kane. Going to them was suicide. But there was one option. The external audit firm contracted once a year to review our compliance. I'd handled their invoices, I knew their contact. At 9:14 a.m., I drafted an anonymous email using a burner domain, attached a compressed version of the files, and wrote only 2 lines. You missed something last quarter. You'll want to look closer at CFont G1 activity logs. Then I hit send. I spent the rest of that day waiting for panic to knock on my door again. Nothing happened. No calls. No messages. It was worse than silence. It was preparation. The following evening, a black sedan was parked across from my building. It stayed there for hours, engine idling. Maybe I imagined it, maybe not. I didn't go out. At 2 a.m., another email came through, this time from an unlisted address. We've received your submission, verification underway. No greeting, no signature, just that. I slept maybe an hour. When I woke up, the sedan was gone. But the fear wasn't. That afternoon, Mallory, the head of security, called me. Her tone was different now. Mark, just a heads up. There's going to be an audit review tomorrow. External firms visiting. Don't come in yet. Just stay reachable. I didn't ask why. I already knew. That night, I packed a small bag, stored copies of everything on a cloud drive under a different alias, and deleted my local cache. I burned the flash drive in the sink, watched it curl and melt until the air smelled like burnt wiring and cheap metal. By the time I closed the curtains, I'd stopped shaking. My fear had turned into something colder. I wasn't trying to clear my name anymore. I wasn't trying to prove I was innocent. I just wanted to see the truth, land where it belonged. And when it did, when the silence finally broke, I wanted to be awake for it. That night, I stopped trying to clear my name. I started digging his grave. They always say justice takes time. They never say how quiet that time can be. When the storm finally came, it didn't start with shouting or chaos. It started with coffee. Friday morning, 8:03 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Turn on the news, Channel 7. I did. The ticker was already running across the screen. Major corporation under investigation for internal fraud. Source's name, Chief Financial Officer. The camera showed my building, my floor, through the glass of the main lobby. Security officers in suits, external auditors, clipboards, flash drives in sealed envelopes. And right in the middle of it all, Kane, walking with that same sharp confidence, until someone handed him a document. His smile didn't crack immediately. It took about 3 seconds. Then it fell apart. My phone started buzzing again. Unrecognized numbers, internal contacts, messages from coworkers, fragments like, "Are you seeing this? They say you're cleared. Holy hell, Mark, you were right." I didn't answer any of them. I just sat there, coffee going cold, TV flickering, breathing like someone learning how to again. Around noon, Mallory called. No greeting. Just, you did this, didn't you? I said nothing. She sighed, not angry, not surprised. They found it all. Offshore accounts, forged vendor payments, the dummy contractors. He used your login as a cover for months. IT traced the access chain this morning. It's over. Over? I repeated. The word felt strange in my mouth. They'll probably contact you for a statement, she said, but unofficially. Good job. Then she paused. You didn't send anything directly to the auditors, did you? No, I said, and technically I wasn't lying. Must have been a lucky coincidence. She laughed once, short, knowing. Lucky's a word for it. Stay put for now. HR's drafting your reinstatement. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the dark TV screen. For the first time in weeks, it looked like a person again. Tired, but not hunted. By Monday, the office was buzzing. Kane had been placed on administrative leave, pending legal review. That was the official phrase. Unofficially, everyone knew he'd been escorted out with his badge deactivated and his desk sealed. The company sent out a memo thanking employees for their patience and professionalism. No mention of me. That was fine. I went back in on Tuesday. The elevator ride felt longer than it ever had. When the doors opened, a few people looked up, unsure whether to smile or stay quiet. I gave them a polite nod and walked to my office. Someone had wiped my desk clean. Literally. New monitor, new cables, no dust. But the air felt lighter. There was no hum of deceit under the silence anymore. Mallory passed by later that morning. She dropped a sealed envelope on my desk. From the board, she said. Inside was a letter. Formal, almost sterile. Effective immediately, your position has been reinstated. Additionally, the board extends an offer to head an internal security oversight initiative. I stared at the last line for a long time. Head of Security Oversight, reporting directly to the CEO. The irony almost made me smile. That evening I stayed late, not to work, just to sit, to let the empty building breathe around me. The lights in the hallway flickered, and for a second I remembered those two men in gray polos. The sound of cables scraping the floor, the smell of hot plastic. They were ghosts now, tools, names erased. But the damage they tried to cause had done something unexpected. It rewired me. For years I'd lived believing that playing fair was enough, that being good, being careful, being the reasonable guy protected you. Turns out it only paints a target. Now I knew better. Before leaving, I opened my new credentials on the system. Administrative Access, Level 4. I could see everything now. Every login, every override, every connection the company made. For a moment, I hovered over Kane's old directory. It was empty. The digital version of a locked, echoing room. I closed it. Outside, the sky had turned deep blue. The city lights bled across the windows like melted gold. I packed up, switched off the lamp, and took one last look at the office that nearly buried me. People will tell you, victory feels loud. They're wrong. It's quiet. It's the sound of doors closing behind the right people. It's the sound of nothing left to explain. I didn't ask for justice. I just wanted the noise to stop. And when it finally did, the silence sounded exactly like peace.